you end up having a bunch of private citizens going out and being vigilantes.
So the Green Lantern Corps in a comic book is awesome and it makes total sense. But when you start to talk about it in a legal sense, it sounds like Dwight Schrute as the as the volunteer sheriff.
Yes.
Like, you have no authority. Get out of here.
Yeah.
In brightest day and blackest night, Green Lanterns are cops with no oversight. And that's what we're here to talk about today. The legal issues of Green Lantern. Welcome to Doug Defends, the show where a real lawyer talks about the legal issues in your favorite movies and TV shows. I am Billy Business, and he is the guardian of the willpower of the law, Mr. Doug Ridley.
I have a lot of will. For sure.
All in your finger.
All here. This is I got this at Comic-Con a few weeks ago, and this is DC's newest lantern ring. And then I have my old Chucky's Green Lantern Chucky's that they came out with a long time ago.
Wow, you're ready for today.
And then so are you.
Yeah, well, obviously we're talking about Marvel. No, I'm just kidding. We are going to talk about 2011's Green Lantern starring Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, Mark Strong, some guy that's almost a Skarsgård, but he's like a Sarsgaard. Sorry, guy. But you're probably wondering, why did you guys choose this movie? Well, we have a couple reasons why. First of all, it's our 50th episode.
Woo!
50 episodes.
Sorry to everybody at home that I just wooed.
No.
It probably spiked.
That's a good woo.
Yeah.
Also, Lanterns, the show on HBO Max, part of the DCU, is hitting HBO. I think the first episode, by the time this airs, should be out now.
Yep.
But also, a lot of times we say on the show, we're not a movie review show.
Right.
We are not of this show. We're not of that show. But because it's our 50th.
Yes.
And because this movie gets labeled a lot of times as the worst superhero movie ever made, which I don't think it is.
It's not that bad.
We are going to talk about the legal issues in this movie, but we're also, I think we make a little case for Green Lantern just as not the worst. I'm not saying the best.
No,
not the worst.
Not the best. Not by a country mile. Not the best. But
Right.
I went into the movie just hoping for lantern rings, the oath, and them making stuff with the rings, and that was my
check
entry.
It's all there.
That was my entry level, and then.
But you have a special memory with this movie.
I do. I have a very special memory about this movie, and the lore of this movie actually is intertwined with my family. So when my son Connor was quite a bit younger, I think he must have been 7 at the time. He was the cute kid that would ask questions at Comic-Con panels, just in general, and very, very articulate for a young kid, and got in line for the Green Lantern panel and stood up and said, I have a question for Ryan.
This is a question for Ryan. What does it feel like to say the Green Lantern oath?
And it has been hailed as one of the cutest moments in Comic-Con
in
history.
Hall H, yeah.
And in Hall H history.
Oh my God, you're the cutest. It sounds a little like this. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.
And because of that, also, Ryan had been asked backstage in interviews to recite the oath and had refused. And so there was questions in the industry about whether or not he was a studio plant, whether my son was a studio plant or not. And I'm going on the he's not a studio plant. That was real. And I'm his dad and he's super cute.
Yeah,
and
where's that Warner Brothers check?
I know, exactly. Like we missed out. But on the wide shot, after he asked the question, Ryan actually brought him upstage and signed the Green Lantern Rebirth book, and that has his likeness on the front with Best Question Ryan Reynolds on it. And then we hung out and got a chance to go meet him backstage. And so before we had seen the movie, we were already the biggest fans of the movie. And Entertainment Weekly does a collage of all of the pictures, from Comic-Con every year. And Ryan and Connor, with their rings pointed at the camera, was part of the collage. So it's an awesome part of our family lore.
And in one of those, like, we probably knew each other in another life moment, I was there. I was part of the press back then, and I was in the press line, and that moment had been a big thing, and a lot of people asked him about it. So we've crossed paths, Mr. Ridley.
We were very close with each other. And my wife saw an interview later, many years later, with Blake Lively. And Blake was talking about, when did she know that Ryan was the guy? And she actually said there was this really cute kid at Comic-Con. Seeing the way that Ryan interacted with Connor made her believe that he could be father material.
So we can trace all the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Taylor Swift drama all the way back to you.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. But
that's my takeaway of the entire story.
If my offspring can encourage that gene pool's offspring, then I feel like I've blessed the world in some way.
I think Connor needs to go back now, 15, 16 years later, and just repair everybody's friendships. I think he can do it.
I think he has the will to do
it. The willpower. So we were talking a little bit before the show started. This movie comes out. It's Warner Brothers' big thing. Now remember, this is a year before Dark Knight Rises, and everyone is kind of thinking like, well, DC now is locked into the Nolan way of making movies. Mm-hmm. And this movie was like, In fact, if I recall correctly, Man of Steel kind of launched the DCEU, but I think the original plan was for this to launch the DCEU. And when this tanked at the box office, they kind of said, no, Man of Steel. It was always Man of Steel, which might be true because tonally this does not fit with what came later with Zack Snyder stuff. But when I saw it, I didn't think it was the worst. I was like, guys, did we forget Jonah Hex existed?
Right.
Yeah.
And Nick Cage's Ghost Rider had existed before this.
Woof.
So fans, stand back on your claim that it's the worst. If I had made this movie, I would have done some things very, very, very different.
Right.
One of the things that surprised me about the way that they did the art style of this movie, we've talked about this a little bit. Not only is it really, really dark just in general, but I felt like they made such an effort to make things very intricate and very complicated that they ended up making everything ugly. And like the if they had just made the uniform, if he had just worn the uniform rather than CG'd the uniform on, I think that would have made a difference. If the uniform had been literally like the standard Green Lantern uniform in the comics, I think that it actually would have made a difference in how people saw the film. And
I got the intention.
Yeah.
The intention was because, they're like, why did you CGI a suit? I'm like, well, it moves and everything, and it's cool. It's cool. The idea that the energy is living. It's moving. It's not just like Batman's suit where it's tactical. It's part of the power set. But I agree. Like, I get the philosophy. It just didn't quite always look right. I think,
Yeah.
I texted you while I was watching it because I remember having slightly more positive feelings about it before rewatching it. I was like, I think I figured out the main problem of this movie, which is nobody wants anything. So we're not, when you think of like your favorite superhero, when you think of your favorite movies in general, there's a goal. I want this thing. And we're watching the journey of them going. Sometimes it's, I want this relationship. I literally want this MacGuffin. I want something that's going to drive me to do what I'm doing.
Right.
With Green Lantern, every single character just sits back and waits for something to happen to them. So the movie has no forward momentum because you're just sitting there, and it's in screenwriting. Sometimes they call it and then storytelling. Hal does this, and then this happens to him, and then this happens to him, and then this happens to him. And that's every single character. Because if you're like, what does Hal want when he starts the movie? I'm like, I don't know. To be like his dad? That's not really a... Yeah. What does Hector want? I guess maybe Blake Lively sometimes.
He wants Carol.
Sometimes. What does Carol want? To be in the job she already has?
To not crash a jet?
Yeah, no one really wants anything except Sinestro.
Right. Well, and Parallax.
But what does Parallax want?
The weird octopus monster wants to destroy Oa.
Sure, but again, it's like, but what does Parallax want? I guess revenge.
Revenge. I mean, so I think that there is that story, and I think that if it had been a Hector Hammond villain story, that would have been one thing. Which again, they tried so hard to make that so ugly and so hard to watch. If it had been a Parallax is coming, a super monster is coming towards the Earth and is going to destroy the Earth. Simple story, and we all kind of get our heads around that. Both of those stories are interesting stories. The guy who performs an alien autopsy, Hector Hammond, who then ends up being infected, and it makes his head expand painfully. Like there's something there, and if they had the time, maybe just to focus on Hector Hammond and then make him want to, I don't know, take revenge against Hal, so they have some sort of like superhero battle of will versus big brain, or something like that. That would have been interesting as well. But still, there, so much of this is interesting because of the fact that you've got this very complicated world behind it, and you've got this mythology building. It never took off from there.
No, but I will say, like, one of the coolest things I thought was the scene where the helicopter's crashing at the party.
Yeah.
And we get to see him use his ring for the first time.
Yeah.
And we've already seen the training montage on Oa. We see how Kilowog uses his ring. I love, like, kind of like the parking boot on his feet, which is pretty cool. But seeing, like, okay, well, how does Hal think?
Right.
And that's one of the coolest things of just Green Lantern in general is, like, Superman is always going to have laser vision. And if someone gets Superman's powers, they have laser vision too. But every Green Lantern, they have the power to make whatever they want. So seeing Hal make the racetrack and make different things, it's like, it's such a cooler way to get insight into a character's philosophy by seeing what they make.
And that was what I loved about this, going all the way back to the poster behind you of Super Friends. I mean, Green Lantern on Super Friends was my favorite character on that show. I mean, Batman and Robin were kind of interesting, and Superman was kind of interesting, and I liked Wonder Woman, but Green Lantern could do anything. And the idea that there's this power that is only limited by your imagination and your force of will, you being a force to be reckoned with, you exerting your willpower, you exerting your thought, and then seeing the differences. There's a scene early on with Tomar Ray, who's the bird fish looking
Jeffrey Rush,
dude. Yes, and he is doing this super interesting, physics engineering kind of construct, and then Hal tries to do it, and it just kind of looks like clunky chains,
Right.
you know. But it shows the lack of control that he has. It shows his imagination, and in the comics, you see too that Jon Stewart, who we will see or have seen
At this point, yeah.
in Lanterns, has in the comics has an engineering background, which makes him very, very different than Hal Jordan, who's a test pilot. You know, Jon Stewart in the comic books is also a Marine, and so he has a military background as well. So you have constructs that are so different between even, you know, the Green Lanterns themselves, and I could go farther, but
Well, see, I grew up in the era of Kyle.
yeah,
So Kyle was an artist.
Kyle was a
So he
yeah.
would make really cool things.
I was just about to go there, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, I'll pull back. But no, you want to talk about Kyle, because Kyle was an illustrator. I mean, that's what he did. So he would make the prettiest, most creative things, and every single one of those is a reflection of who they are. And then, you know, we go into the other Lantern that we know exists now in the current DCU, which is jerk Guy Gardner.
Sure.
And his constructs are a reflection of him being a guy with a bad bowl cut, you know, and it reflects who he is, and arrogance and not being very careful and all of those things.
Not subtle at
Yeah.
all.
No,
I mean,
no.
if you watch Superman, you know, the
Yeah.
movie from last summer, even what he uses to take down the kaiju.
Yeah.
But I think that's the fun part of Green Lantern. I will say, and my memory can always be distorted, as you probably know, as in court. But I do feel like the movie, when I saw it in theater, was not. And when we say this movie's dark, we don't mean like Tim Burton
No.
in our feelings dark. We mean like literally, it looks like the brightness was cranked all the way down.
Right.
I don't remember it being like that in the theater. I remember that being like a Blu-ray problem and not a theater problem. But I do remember sitting there, and I went with my friend, and he was just arms crossed the entire, like he didn't buy in. But I was like, all right, maybe this isn't the best movie, but like, show me another movie where like Sinestro and Kilowog and Tomar Ray are flying through space,
Yeah.
attacking a big monster.
Yeah.
To me still, like, you know, I'm someone that defends the 2017 Joss Whedon
Yeah.
Justice League.
Yeah.
Because there is a part of me that's like, sure, it's not the best, but like, I like to see sometimes the comic book cartoons come to life. And I
Yeah.
feel like this Green Lantern has that philosophy, you know?
When I was watching this for the show, and at the beginning of the movie, Hal Jordan's predecessor, Abin Sur, another pinkish guy, but with no hair,
Jango Fett.
Jango Fett.
Yeah.
I had completely forgotten that
Yeah.
it was Tamara Morrison, and I listened to the voice, and I did a double take, and like, oh, that's the voice of all the clones.
Yep. And Boba, yeah.
And Boba.
So yeah, it's not the best movie. I'm not gonna say it is.
No.
But to say it's the worst movie, like there's a laundry list.
Oh, yeah.
Of comic book movies that are far like. Really, you would pick Catwoman over this,
Right.
You know,
Wonder Woman 84, worse than this
Sure.
one.
I'll give you that. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, yeah.
I do think that like Ryan Reynolds maybe wasn't what I thought in my head of Hal Jordan in casting.
Yeah.
It did feel like they combined a little bit of the Kyle character with a Hal.
Agreed. I agree with
Yeah.
that. And at the time, Nathan Fillion had been doing a huge pitch to be Green Lantern and had done voice acting for Green Lantern in some of the animated stuff. So Nathan Fillion was who I think the fans believed was going to be,
Right.
you know, in this role. And Ryan Reynolds certainly was nowhere near where he is now. But for the people who totally hated Green Lantern, thank Green Lantern for giving you Deadpool.
Yeah,
because
100%.
Green Lantern was a dress rehearsal for him for Deadpool, and he plays basically the same character. I mean, you know, he's got a little bit more
Yeah.
trauma, you know, maybe, and he's a little more subtle in Green Lantern, but it's Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds. And
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of acting going on in Green Lantern.
Yeah.
But, you know, the supporting cast is so strong.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of strong, I think Mark Strong is the standout. He is
Yeah.
the one character that really wants something.
Yep.
And I wish that this had done better only if to continue to see his interpretation of Sinestro.
Right.
But watching this again, you know, now that we've done the show for 50 episodes.
Yes.
I've said it before, you've spoiled me on shows because now I watch things with a legal mindset.
Yes.
And it did get me thinking about a lot of things about maybe not even so much the movie, but just Green Lantern in general.
Yeah.
So just if you've made it this far and you have no idea what we're talking about, God bless you. But basically the whole premise of the Green Lantern is that a long time ago, there were a group of space beings called the Guardians. They were able to harness willpower into actual green energy, and it goes into a big battery, like building-sized battery, and all the Green Lanterns get their power from this battery. It's in their rings, and they charge it up. And what makes Green Lanterns different from a Superman or a Batman is that it is not a singular superhero.
Right.
They are quite literally space cops.
Yep.
The Guardians have divided all of space into like 3,600 some odd sectors.
Not so mud. 3,600. Exactly.
Oh,
Good job.
Look at me.
Yeah. We're in 2814.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And there are a certain number of lanterns assigned to each sector.
Generally two.
Generally two, but in DC, I feel like an Earth has like 8 now.
Earth does have
Earth has a lot.
A lot.
So Abin Sur was a Green Lantern. He dies or is dying, and his ring goes to basically find a replacement. It ends up on Hal Jordan's finger, who is a test pilot, and he becomes the new Green Lantern. There are also, now, if green is willpower, there are other emotional spectrums that also give power. Yellow is fear, which is what Parallax is. He's made up of fear.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of other ones. In the comics, I loved Atrocitus, which was the Red Lantern.
Oh, for sure.
Which is just rage, pure
Yes.
rage.
Yes. Every and the different colored rings that are over my shoulder are like every single one of them has meaning to it. Jeff Johns brilliantly created that part of the Lantern mythology,
Yes.
and every single color has an emotion tied to it, and then hope makes willpower stronger because it does.
Yeah.
So the blue ring of hope, if it gets near the green ring of willpower, supercharges it, and just all of those interactions. The other thing too was that way back in the Super Friends days, the color yellow was actually almost like the Green Lantern's kryptonite.
Yeah, he was
Like
just allergic to yellow.
Exactly, allergic to yellow because it's fear. And
Which
then
sounds like a toddler who won't eat something yellow on their plate, you know?
I'm allergic to Brussels sprouts.
No, yellow. You know? Yeah, you're right. Like up until Green Lantern Rebirth, that was kind of lame. Just
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah.
God, yellow, get it away. No mustard on my hot dog.
Right.
But
then they explained that there's
Yes.
reasons behind it. And,
right.
Yeah.
But as you can tell just by us explaining it, this movie had a lot of heavy lifting to do to try to get that information out quickly.
Yeah.
But the takeaway is space cops,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They aren't there to be a Superman or to be a Batman to fight a Joker. They're literally there to enforce the law in all the galaxy.
Right. In their entire sector, and that power bestowed upon them by the Guardians does make it interesting for a criminal defense attorney to talk about
So-
space cops.
Let's talk about just space for just a second.
Yes.
Because I'm going to throw out a Billy hypothetical TM.
Okay.
Let's say I build a rocket.
Okay.
Let's say I bring you along.
Yes.
Let's say we go up far past the moon. We are just in space together
That
in my
sounds
little
awesome.
rocket, right?
Wow.
Well,
What
it's
could,
about
what could go wrong?
it's about to get a lot less awesome. Let's say you just really just get under my skin,
Right.
And
One too many yells into the hot microphone.
and then somehow you find yourself unalived at my hands.
Right.
I kick you out the space lock. your body is just gone.
Right.
And then I come back to Earth and they say, "Where's Doug?" And I say, "He went out the space lock. He went space crazy, space dementia."
Space madness.
So can you commit a crime in space? Because I feel like once you leave Earth, do Earth laws even still apply?
It actually does apply. Possibly the coolest name of a law that we've ever talked about on the show so far.
Okay.
The Outer Space Treaty
Get
of
outta here.
1967. It exists. You can go and check it out.
Written by George Jetson.
No, but I mean, the fact that it's a treaty means that the countries of the world have signed on to this. The U.S. has signed on to this.
Okay.
And so the rules about outer space law, it's actually on the book, and it's been on the book since before we touched down on the moon. So as we started exploring into space, this treaty was acknowledged that it needed to happen, because if nothing else, our Cold War had extended into space at that point, right?
Sure.
So we need to have some agreements on what's going to happen. And the agreement is really similar to something that we talked about on a previous episode about the laws in maritime laws in the water. The spaceship, when it closes, when the doors close and that rocket is in the United States, until it makes it back home
Okay.
and the doors open again,
Yeah.
wherever the doors might open, whether it's in the United States or somewhere else, it is subject to United States jurisdiction, territory, and laws. And so that is one of the ways that legally you have jurisdiction over someone, is by territory like that. So this outer space treaty says you're subject to the laws of the United States until you get back.
So what if we landed on a planet that was a civilized planet? They had their own rules and laws, and we open up and we go there, and then I commit a crime. Am I subject to their laws, or because of the treaty, like I'm subject to American laws, or am I double screwed?
I think probably you're double screwed,
Okay.
because I think what's going to happen is you still would be technically subject to the laws of Earth. Right now, we don't have, law. We don't have anything on our books right now for what would happen on Planet X.
Right.
We'll just call it that just to make it easier. But if Planet
Elon Musk's Planet X.
maybe we won't call it that then.
Planet Y.
Planet Y. So other civilized planet, it would have their rules, and you'd be subject to that jurisdiction.
Okay.
The other thing that the Outer Space Treaty also covers, though, is if the splashdown coming back to Earth happens outside of Australia, then you're actually subject to some Australia territorial jurisdiction as well. So if the capsule splashdown had a crime scene in it, then potentially you might be subject to Australian law, as well as subject to whatever happened while you were subject to the United States law while you were in space. But as complicated as all that is, it does exist on the books. We have Outer Space Treaty.
Wouldn't that be a hard case to prove, though? If
Oh, yeah.
somehow I shot you out of the airlock and you just died in space,
Right.
how there's no body, there's
Right.
no, I mean, maybe you could try to find a motive, but there's almost no evidence.
Right. Well, and especially with the way you worded the hypothetical, you built a rocket and we went up. I'm going to bet you probably, if your plan was to stop my mic popping and off me and shoot me out the airlock in space, I'm going to guess that you probably would not have installed surveillance cameras on your rocket that you were taking up to space to deposit me out the airlock.
Sure.
But what we do know is that in every rocket, in every ship that is sent into space, there's tons of recording. There's tons of biometric data. There is, they record every single aspect of everything that happens when people are going into space for science because they're interested in it. So with your hypothetical, you probably would get away with it. If the hypothetical was you and I were both astronauts, like no way in hell, every single aspect of it would be recorded. The other challenging part of crime in space is the fact that so much of our science, our forensic science, deals with gravity and deals with blood splatter, deals with evidence, deals with DNA and how it lands and projectiles and all of the forensic science that you would get if you were doing a serious crime case in court. So all of that would be thrown out the window along with Doug because science doesn't apply the same way in space. So the physics of an anti-gravity crime scene are going to be different as well.
I mean, really, the only way to do it would be to somehow make it look like an accident.
Well, yeah. And the way that you describe the hypothetical is the best way to do it. Your rocket, no surveillance camera, no evidence, or these days, just slap my face on, an AI model and have me going, and have me going out the thing.
But I can't, in my hypothetical, I can't just build a rocket and go into space, right?
No.
What do I have to do legally in order to... Can I go into outer space if I just choose to?
So, surprisingly, the answer is yes. But it is so complicated and cost prohibitive that it would probably not work. So, first of all, you'd have to build the rocket, which is the easiest part of all of this, actually. However, the legal challenge with that is that in order to build the rocket, you'd have to have illegal munitions, rocket fuel, explosive devices. And, while there are people that have very robust model rocket hobbies and build rockets that will launch very, very high, the level that you would need in order to propel a person and their buddy into space is significant. Then the issue is you need the federal license in order to get that high.
Okay.
So, and it's possible, but the amount of red tape to get a federal license to put a person that high there's a reason why only the multi-billionaires are talking about it. I mean,
fair.
And then you'd have to make sure that you have my informed consent and that, I agree that your rocket is safe and everything else, and that I sign away all of my rights and waivers and everything, because who knows what's going to happen to the rocket and who knows what's going to happen to me up in space,
you're going out the airlock,
which might save you again. And then the Outer Space Treaty also applies and addresses a bit about private citizens being up in space. And so there are rules and regulations and forms and licenses and things like that. So the easy answer is yes. The more complex answer is not without a ton of money and a ton of red tape and a ton of time and jumping through so many hoops that it just makes it almost impossible.
I kind of feel like at that point, if I'm determined to get into outer space, I'm probably just going to do it illegally because space is space. You can't own space.
Right. My freedom, my rights.
Yeah.
Except the Outer Space Treaty of 1967.
Well, I didn't sign it.
Right, exactly.
Well, let's talk about that. I made a joke, but in all seriousness, I think now we run into a situation where, and this is where we're getting really, really hypothetical, so just go with me on it, but the Green Lantern Corps was started by these Guardians. I guess they have no jurisdiction. Like they can't just arbitrarily decide to split the galaxy up into that many sectors. Like, okay, fine. Well, then I'm splitting California up into 5,000 sectors and I will send a cop to every single one. Like, I can't do that.
You could do that. You end up having a bunch of private citizens going out and being vigilantes.
So that's essentially what the Green Lanterns are. They're just private citizens, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the rules that we'll see as the Lanterns show develops on HBO, and that we see in this movie is really, I mean, it's right back to our superhero mythology on vigilante. But private citizens can issue arrests. You can do a private citizen's arrest. It's fraught with all kinds of legal trouble.
How often does that actually happen?
Well, see, not that often, but it's because the rules behind it are challenging.
Okay.
Sometimes if I see a misdemeanor crime happen, a low-level crime happen, police officers will say, well, this person stole from you. Do you want to make a private person's arrest? Which we do have in our code here in California, and most states have that ability, and you can do that. And that's when people talk about pressing charges. That's the closest thing to pressing charges. Do you want to press charges? Yeah. What you're really doing is not pressing charges. What you're actually doing is deciding that you want to issue a private person's arrest because it's a misdemeanor committed outside of a police officer's presence. When it's a more serious crime like a felony, that's when you get into a little bit more of a challenge, because if I decide I'm going to take you into custody for committing a felony and I'm wrong, I don't have police immunity or governmental immunity or anything along those lines. And so our space cops can be sued for being wrong about all that because they don't have that level of immunity.
But you couldn't do it either way, because if someone told you that they did a felony, you couldn't arrest them, citizen's arrest, because of you're a lawyer, right?
Right. Well, and for me, it's privileged. So
Right.
somebody admits that they did something, or somebody talks to me and with legal advice on something that they have done. No, I mean, that's absolute privilege. It's like telling your pastor, your priest, or your doctor.
But what if they do it in front of you? They're not telling you they did it. You actually watch them do it.
Well, if they did it in front of me, then I don't have an attorney-client privilege with them at that point. I mean, unless it's my client who then commits a crime in front of me, and then I have a lot of ethical obligations at that point. And it becomes very, very complicated. I have a couple times over the course of my career had clients who have suggested that they were going to commit a crime, and I have to be very careful how I respond to that.
What if you saw one of your clients actually make a sale of an illegal substance in your presence? Like, you went to go meet them, and right as you walked up to them, they were exchanging the money in the bag, and you're just like, okay, I'm watching you do this now.
It's a really good question. And if it's an existing client, what I would need to do is fire them as my client, turn around and walk away, and I wouldn't be able to say something because of my attorney-client privilege. And thankfully, that is such an odd hypothetical that it just doesn't really happen. I mean, I haven't even talked to anyone that's happened. On the other hand, if it happened with one of my colleagues that do criminal defense that, might be hanging out too much with their criminal clients, and I probably wouldn't know that much about it.
I'm sure it's happened at least once in the history of law,
Oh yeah, I'm sure it has, and I'm sure if you Google lawyers who see crimes, you can probably find some things that are along those lines. And then there's lawyers who actually commit crimes and are participating in crimes as well, which complicates things immensely.
So, we're talking about the Green Lantern Corps and its jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Especially because everything's cut into sectors. Now, like I said, totally hypothetical, because obviously who gives them the power? But let's take it to the real world for a second.
Yeah.
Just because I am a true crime junkie, all these Netflix things, can you break down a little bit about jurisdiction between different authorities? Because sometimes it's like, well, the county police came, but then the state police came, but then they had to wait for the FBI to come, and then this has to come.
Right.
So it's like, what is kind of like, explain a little bit about law enforcement jurisdiction and how that can change, or what kind of crimes, consider changing
Right.
who deals with it.
A law enforcement officer who sees a crime can arrest a person.
Okay.
Period. Hard stop. So, this idea that, well, we were in Los Angeles, but now we're in Anaheim, so you don't have any jurisdiction over me. Not really true. You would end up wanting to bring in the local authorities because you want the local authorities to be involved with it. And the hypothetical that you phrase, where it's like the local police and then the state police and then the FBI, they're bringing in heavier hitters intentionally because it's a more serious case. And generally, the federal government has more law enforcement resources to investigate more complicated cases than the state or than the county would. So that's when that's especially on shows where you see, oh, well, the feds are taking this case over, or the feds took it from us, or, whatever.
They always seem really mad. Is that usually the case?
In my experience, no.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, whew.
I was going to say, if the FBI needs to get involved, it'd be like, oh, that's on them. I don't want to deal with this,
I mean, and how we see it play out sometimes in some of the more dramatic shows that involve jurisdictions is, the feds care more about their federal crime than, but you hurt Bob who lives right here up the street. That's usually how the drama plays out.
Right.
Because they will be looking at it from a much bigger perspective.
Sure.
But when it's interstate, some sort of but when it's something that happens crosses state lines and there's multiple jurisdictions that are involved, the federal government comes in. When it's super complicated, the federal government's going to come in. When it's a large amount of money that is dealt with, the federal government's going to come in. When it's terrorism, government's going to come in. Federal government.
This is maybe a weird question, but if it's like a grisly murder, is probably local police?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yep.
A string of grisly murders that might be the same person, FBI?
Sometimes, but not that often.
Okay.
What I saw and did back in the days when I was a prosecutor, there were absolutely cases where we had people who committed crimes in Ventura County. We had the same person who also committed crimes in Los Angeles County. There are statutes that now allow one county to pick. And usually, you want there to be some cooperation between the counties. I remember my counterparts down in Los Angeles, I would talk to them. They usually were more than grateful to send it up to Ventura County. They knew that we had a higher prosecution rate and we were tougher on things. We had more resources because LA is so inundated in their judicial system. So there would be cases now with our new laws where I've had people call my office not that long ago and say, I never stepped foot in Ventura County. What the heck am I doing here?
Yeah.
And it's because somehow, somewhere they could tie it to Ventura County. LA said they were fine with it. And so they moved it here. When we're talking about multiple very, very serious crimes, sometimes there might be a reason to bring in the FBI for additional resources. If they believe that it's something that we can classify as a serial killer or something along those lines, we would have the federal government come in because they have more resources. Sometimes even the state might come in because the state has their own prosecution and the Attorney General's office and all of that.
All right. Another Billy hypothetical, TM.
I love it.
All right. So I commit a crime. I get stopped and arrested by Hal Jordan of the Green Lantern Corps.
Yes.
Now, whatever the crime was, it's almost incidental. He takes me to OA for justice. If I hire you as my defense attorney, are you able to A, get me off, and B, can we turn around and get him for kidnapping me to OA?
100%.
Okay.
Especially if you hire me, because I'm awesome.
Okay, well, wait.
But,
Let's take OA out.
But
What if he
okay.
What if he takes me down to the county jail? Now are we looking at a citizen's arrest?
You're looking at a citizen's arrest,
Okay.
and the law on that is that he needs to be transported to police custody as soon as possible
Okay.
with haste.
What if he takes me to OA to get judgment from them, but then brings me back for Earth justice?
That's not with haste. so the problem with that is if it was someone who was actually, Los Angeles Police Department, and you are taken into custody, you need to be brought before a judge 2 court days later.
Okay.
And if not, you have to be released, or it's a violation of your constitutional rights, period.
No matter what the crime is.
No matter what the crime is.
Okay.
So you have to be brought before a judge within 2 days. And so 2 court days.
I was going to say, what if you get caught on a Friday at midnight or something?
You would be surprised the number of calls that we get at Ridley Defense with family members who said, oh, it's Thursday or Friday before a long holiday weekend, and for some reason they picked now to arrest my client. There's not a some reason. The reason is because a Friday arrest before a holiday weekend means that person's not going to court until Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because it would be 2 court days later. So they can hold him longer because it's based upon business days, court days, whenever
Right.
the court's open. So your hypothetical, if Hal Jordan brought you to OA for Owen justice,
And the Guardian said, take him to Earth to put him in Earth jail.
then your attorney would argue that Hal Jordan should be arrested for false imprisonment and kidnapping for taking you to OA, and probably it would go nowhere because he's got a cool flashy ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
that point.
but I mean, it is absolutely a violation at that point. The law here in California says that you need to be taken directly, directly to local law enforcement, and then it's all right. I mean, if he put a green bubble around you and took you to the LAPD headquarters, you have been lawfully detained by the Green Lantern Corps.
That just seems, to borrow another superhero's phrase, small potatoes.
Yeah, it is small potatoes. But what's interesting is that let's say that it's some sort of what I think we're going to see on the Lantern Show, which is some sort of intergalactic mystery as well as maybe something local. I mean, I can't imagine that they're going to have an entire season of Lanterns and have it only have to do with something that happens, in the Midwest.
No.
But so if let's say for some reason that, you've stolen a lantern battery, or something along those lines, that's not like an Earth crime. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a hypothetical that fits, and I keep thinking of exceptions to my own hypothetical. But if you're transported then to OA to face their justice, again, we don't have treaties with OA. That's a kidnapping. I mean, it's false imprisonment and kidnapping. So that's what I would argue. The challenge, though, is that in this universe, I would lose because I don't have one of these for real.
But the thing is, at least in this movie, it seems like no one on Earth is aware of Green Lanterns, meaning that, it's not like, oh, a Green Lantern dropped him off. So, in Superman, in the new DCU, I think it'd be a different story.
Right, exactly.
But in this DC universe over here that Green Lantern's in, then I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, and it would require a new outer space treaty of 2026 rather than the outer space treaty of 1967, where we would acknowledge that there are these off-planet space cops, and in the same way that the feds might get involved with something with that would be a local crime because of their jurisdiction and because of their extra resources, I could foresee a new outer space treaty of 2026 where we acknowledge that the Green Lantern Corps has exponentially more resources than even the federal government or the UN or NATO or any sort of world body.
Right.
And so then we would acknowledge and empower them to do something.
I already know the answer to this question because it's just so common sense, but I just want to see what you would say. Imagine there's a very respected police officer, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a crime scene. I'm just killing it with the hypotheticals today.
We're rocking it.
There's a crime scene. I am there at the crime scene. This very well-respected cop, he gets shot and he's on the ground and he takes his badge and his gun and he says, "Billy, I choose you to take my spot."
Wow.
Yeah.
What a moment.
A moment, but also,
That's amazing.
I'm going to guess no. Yeah.
No. It does not grant you law enforcement powers.
Okay.
Yeah,
So just having a badge doesn't do me any good.
No.
So,
no.
I mean, really then, like, Hal shouldn't even be a Green Lantern.
Well, no. He should be a Green Lantern. But if Hal were Coast City Police Department, because Abin Sur was Coast City Police Department and with his dying breath gave him his badge and his gun, that is not how we grant law enforcement authority here. But in the Green Lantern world and with the central battery, the rings are programmed to seek out the next person who's brave and can overcome fear and has willpower. And so they have set up a system where the ring chooses the next person. And Abin Sur didn't even choose Hal Jordan necessarily.
No.
I mean, he eventually, had that interaction with him, and so it kind of blessed him or whatever. But the ring is the one that chooses. And I think, just going back again to some of our conversation at the very beginning of the episode, I think that is another aspect of Green Lantern mythology that is really cool. We see in animated versions, in all the comic books, we see the rings choosing unexpected people, and we see it choosing people regardless of who they are, of station of life. And, sometimes the rings in comics will choose a queen. Sometimes the ring will choose like the poorest pauper ever because they showed bravery and lifted them up out of circumstances. So the ring is the one that chooses. So I would say that Hal Jordan's, the ring choosing Hal Jordan, totally appropriate for Green Lantern. But
it's just, I guess the parallel I was drawing was more like the ring is the authority,
it
right?
is, yeah.
A badge on a cop has no authority other than just literal identification.
Zero authority. And we saw this and we talked about this on our Friends episode with Phoebe, because when Phoebe finds the badge and flashes it to Gary, who's, who really owned it, it doesn't work that way.
It is funny, though, the way that you just described the rings. Just this whole episode, I've been thinking, like, the parallels in Marvel and DC, it's just like, it's Mjolnir, right?
Yeah.
It chooses who's worthy.
Yeah.
And then even earlier when you were describing Hector Hammond, it's like, oh, that's the leader. The exact same thing in Hulk. These guys have always been doing, it's Pepsi Coke, right?
Yeah, for
you
sure.
can enjoy both. Yeah, I think the idea of space cops is one of those things where it's like the Green Lantern Corps in a comic book is awesome and it makes total sense. But when you start to talk about it in a legal sense, it sounds like Dwight Schrute as the as the volunteer sheriff. Yes. Like, you have no authority. Get out of here.
Yeah. And don't bring your firearm into the office.
But you know what? I still am very excited for the Lantern show. Here's a weird meta future thing. I'm sure I watched it last night.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm sure I probably watched it again this morning.
Very likely.
I always thought the Green Lantern was cool. And even though this movie it's not my favorite superhero movie, I don't think it's the worst, but I do like visually enjoy watching it, and it did actually push me to read Green Lantern Rebirth, which I think is an amazing story. And when you go back and read Emerald Twilight and just the whole kind of odyssey of Hal Jordan, like Green Lantern's a really cool character in the comics.
Yeah, and for folks at home, yes, we know that you know that we are legal experts and that we are big nerds, but we're both very versed in the Green Lantern comics. And if you're looking to start somewhere, pick up the graphic novel Green Lantern Rebirth, written by Jeff Johns. It is a really great place to start. If you try to start today with pick it up, a book off the shelf today, you're going to be confused as heck. But if you pick up Green Lantern Rebirth, it's a nice, clean way, jumping on point of reading some of the best of Green Lantern.
I 100% agree. It's really hard sometimes when someone wants to get into Batman or Superman. Like, where do I start? And you're like, well, this and this and this and this. Like Green Lantern, it's easily like Rebirth. Start at Rebirth.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big DC fan. I love when DC gets its moment in the sun, because Marvel has eclipsed it for so long.
Yeah, for sure. And here's hoping. I mean, I Peacemaker was a great series. I really enjoyed that. That was surprisingly good. It's the same people that are driving this train. I want this show to be good.
You know what? Since you watched it last night, I'm just going to assume that you're very happy with it.
I am so happy today as I'm watching this episode from home, having watched Lanterns last night.
Well, if you want to watch more of Doug Defends, you are in the right spot. 50 episodes. There's 49 other episodes for you to go back and watch. We hope you do. We have such a good time doing this show. So here's to 50 more.
Absolutely, my friend. I'm so glad that we're doing this.
And guess what? 51 is coming right here next week.
Green! Wow. I know, right?